We do have some trivia, and out of this trivia, this is a pro tip for the best listing agents. We're going to show you how to use this. But the trivia question for today is what metro area is sending the most newcomers to Harris County? Is it New York? Is it Los Angeles? Is it San Antonio? Or is it Miami? And the answer is Los Angeles.
Oh, LA.
So here is how you use the data. Congratulations, 53% of you got it right. Here's how you use the data. There's a lot of brokers around saying we have the best international platform. We're going to help market your home to people coming from Dubai. But this data just came out from Rice University is some of the most powerful data you have. When you look at who's moving to Harris County, number one is LA, number two is Miami, and number three is San Antonio. And so when somebody's like, I'm going to market your home in Dubai, you ask them,
Oh, but also,
yeah, do you know where people are actually coming from? They're coming from LA, Miami, and San Antonio. And that's where your relationships and that's where your marketing allow you to stand out. The other thing that was so fascinating about this data, again, just brand new from Rice, is if you look at where people are moving from Harris County, it's
like let's
Montgomery.
moving outside of Harris County, but still in the area where they're moving.
No, in general, and this is the best for agents who work in the suburbs, where they say our marketing focuses and targets people moving from Harris County to the suburbs. That gives you a competitive edge because that's the data of where people are coming from. So we love seeing that data. Wanted to wrap that into the trivia.
Perfect.
So here we go.
All right. Dun, 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 dun. The
What's
weatherman will talk about now the national trends.
Yeah, what's going on with the Fed since we spoke to you last about a month ago? The big things again, things that matter to real estate. There's three big things. One, the price of real estate. Two, the cost of money.
Interest rates.
And three, employment. And so
Gas
whenever
prices.
you're in a situation and you're talking to somebody about real estate and you want to sound smart, you're like, there's only three things that matter: prices, cost of money, and employment. So let's look at what trends have been coming from the nationwide policies over the last month. One of the biggest ones, and again, this has made the headlines a lot over the last week, is that inflation is up again, right? We're up. It was supposed to come in about 2.4, we're about 2.7. So, right, that is not a good sign if
Uh,
we're going to get cuts in mortgage rates.
Bob, what does the government want that number to be?
About 2 to 2.1, right?
Okay.
That's about where we were hovering before COVID. We jumped to over 3. They want to see that 2 or 2.1, and you see the fight playing out right now with the president and the Fed chair. Mortgage rates also up a little, kind of correlated to that number. Not too much, but up about 0.1% since we spoke last. Unemployment going the other way. Unemployment is a better number. You want unemployment numbers to be about 2 to 3%, and we're down. So more people have jobs than they did both about a year ago and last time we talked. This is one of the most interesting data points that's out there. And again, this is a fascinating thing. It's in the news. You've probably seen this. In 9 years, on a nationwide basis, 19% of homes have price cuts. That is a huge number compared to anything that most people have seen since they've been practicing real estate. Also, home price growth, it's still up, but it's slowed,
It's
right?
Yeah, this is not a great number. Again, this is nationally, but the reason we're giving you the national news is because when you have people who move from other markets, this is sort of what they're hearing in the overall news. In Houston alone, typically we are 2 to 4% a year of home growth prices. We're not there. We're going to get to that number, but nationally, if we're under two, that's not a robust market.
Well, and you compare that to inflation, right? The
Yeah.
cost of inflation is going up about 2.7. The cost of home prices going up about 1.3. And then again, remember the 1.3 number. That's an important figure. It shows up a little later.
Which means I'm spending more money on all my goods, and yet my house, I'm not able to bank more money in my house.
And inventory is up almost 1/3 year over year on a nationwide basis. That is an enormous number that most people who are practicing real estate now have never seen in their career. Okay, we wanted to tell a story. This is the story of Lennar. I know some of you probably saw this from some of the announcements, but Lennar is the second largest home builder in the US. And so we bring this story to you today as an example of some of the things that are coming. So you're like, why would you include the story of Lennar and specifically what did they do? So what they did, they cut the home prices on the new homes they're building by 9%. It's a huge number compared to last year. So again, they said, we are the second largest home builder. We are what we think are smart people. We see the trends that are coming. And what we did is we cut home prices that we're selling, our new inventory, by 9%. In addition to that, they are up to 13% of incentives. Realtor commissions, both sides, BTSAs, mortgage buy downs, upgrades. So, right, some on realtors, some on their side, some on marketing. But this incentive is the highest since 2009. So
And
remember,
yeah,
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
Great Recession. So essentially, they're giving their buyers about 22% of value from where things stood a year ago.
enormous. And ultimately, what did they do? They sold more homes.
Mhm.
And so again, cut the prices, went up on marketing, sold more homes. We're going to bring this back in later, but this is a fascinating story, especially for the listing agents. So you are able to help your buyers understand what's coming in the market because they are also competing, especially in the suburbs, they are competing with new home builders. And this is what's going on in the nationwide market.
Yeah, it's nationally, but also locally. And those of you on this call that have listings that where you are in newer neighborhoods and competing with new construction, this is the kind of data you want to be able to to ask around in those neighborhoods, find out what the incentives that the builders are offering, so your clients can understand how they can compete. Because what they can't do is overprice and expect to sell when I can buy new with all the bells and whistles for 22% less.
It's incredible. Okay, so what's going on in Houston? So highlighted data from HAR, active listings are up by a third on a year-over-year basis. HAR fascinating stats, the highest number of homes on the market ever in HAR's recorded history, right, since it started. Median sales price is flat. Remember, this is the number you wanted to go back and compare to the 1.3% on a nationwide basis. In Houston, it's less than the nationwide average.
Right. And it's not uncommon that we would be less than because we normally are, but essentially there's virtually no appreciation from last year to this year. Whereas in the COVID years, you were getting 18 to 21% year over year. So it's a pretty dramatic difference.
Now, this next one's interesting because you're going to be like, but Bob, but Paige, I just saw that there was this realtor stat that talked about this phenomenal growth that we had on a year-over-year basis. Don't forget, May, we had the Durette show.
Last year.
July 8th, we had Hurricane Beryl. So the
And
next stats I'm going to give you are the headline message that you see from a lot of realtors who like splashy headlines, but you're going to be the informed realtor.
And so the thing that just we compare year over year because that's our best way to do it, right? So May and June and July and parts of August of last year were lower because we had these big weather events. So it would make sense that we haven't had a weather event during those times. So our stats are going to look stronger this time this year than last year.
And again, this is a headline message where you're differentiating yourself from other agents because again, up single family home sales on a year-over-year basis up 12%. It sounds great until you remind people, oh yeah, we had the Durette show and a hurricane. One of the notable things though is in the luxury market, home sales on a year-over-year basis up by 41%. Again, big difference. But again, don't forget the weather events and again, help your buyers and sellers factor that into their decision making.
Bob, I would also point out that in the $1 million mark here, not only does that category have the benefit of the Derecho and Beryl outperforming those months, but remember in the luxury market, a lot of times your clients are cash buyers or a little less sensitive to interest rates.
So again, good data. Let's just look through some of the graphs. We have about the same amount of inventory that we did 90 days ago, still in the balanced market. Pending sales, again, if you look at the yellow line was from last year. You see the impact that we had from the hurricane, from the derecho events. And you see we're tracking about where we were in 2013 around this time of year. Days on market, we are consistently higher days on market this year than last year. And last year was consistently higher days on market than the year before. And that trend has continued. Price reductions. This again is the big story. We're going to get into more of this in details. Higher number of price reductions than we have seen last year, the year before, and at any point in the last 9 years, right? Your price reduction story is the current story because that's what's leading to future prices.
Right.
One of the things, again, this is just finishing live data for July, so the official numbers aren't out. But again, May and June, more sales than before. Again, June, some of the weather event had a big impact. July, it appears that we are tracking very similar to July close-ins for last year.
Which is not great considering that we had the hurricane in July of last year. For us to sort of be on track as a hurricane month, that's a little eerie for the fall.
Yeah. And again, preliminary data, we'll have that out in a couple weeks of kind of the final July tallied numbers. Here's where things get really interesting. And again, we're going to show you something in a second. Home prices on a monthly average over the last 5 years. When you look at this data, again, there's a lot of seasonality, right? Typically in the spring, that's when prices are the highest because you've got the highest demand.
Right.
But when you compare, this is the pink line, when you compare the average prices for a July to the last couple of years, you see some interesting facts in here. Paige, you want to illuminate that?
Yeah, so if you look at, and you probably might have to blow up your screen because I don't have my readers. When you look at, July of 2025 of where that's that far right bar where that pink line is, and you take that pink line across and you go to July of 24, we're talking prices here, right? July of 24 was a peak compared to July of 25. So you're seeing, and you move then and you go, okay, you go over a little bit further to July of 23, also pretty high. July of 2022, man, that was COVID time. And so you can see that there is some softening here of prices. You also will note that we're not falling off the cliff. But it is a softer market than what we have experienced in any time. And so, what you all are probably feeling in the market is that sellers are reluctant to give up a 22 price that they emotionally believe that their home is worth, despite the fact that they weren't in the market at that time. And buyers are like, ugh, I just can't stomach this. I don't feel that this is the value that I'm getting in that house. So that's that dichotomy of nobody, it's a stalemate, right? Nobody really wants to take the first step.
Again, this is a really big chart to help separate you from other agents who are just going to go on the HAR headline was, the Chronicle headline was. This shows your buyers and sellers what's really going on because you can see here there is a big delta between 2022 and now. We're going to show you the same data, but just in a slightly different way. Before we go to the current data, I want to highlight 2014 through 2019. Again, if you remember around 2013, 2014, we had some phenomenal energy prices, and Houston still has about a third of our economy tied to oil and gas.
So you're talking, Bob, about that middle light blue in the graph.
The middle light blue in the graph. Prices were effectively stagnant, slightly down, on average, for 5 years. And so, right, those are the light blue lines in the middle of the graph for 5 years. Our hypothesis is that from 2022, it's going to be about, again, 5 years before our prices come back to that level.
And
This
you
is
can
again. Oh, Paige, go ahead.
You kind of see it, right? Because and you go to the right side of the graph, Bob, you've done it, the light blues, and then the current one, 2025, is a little bit darker shaded. Those are 3 years past COVID. So we're kind of in that same trend that we saw when our economy was hit pretty hard.
And again, the activity on this is right. Nobody has a crystal ball to predict the future, right? Nobody knew COVID was coming. Nobody knew the fall of Lehman. But when you look at trends, they seem to rhyme. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to help educate your buyers and sellers on what's likely coming so they can make wise decisions based on where they are. What you see from this graph is that we have muted prices at this time of year compared to the last 3 years. What you see here is that our Houston cycle is typically a 5 year cycle of prices, and we're about 3 years in. And so that's going to lead up to one of the magic questions we're going to offer you in a couple minutes on how you can have really good discussions with your clients on what this may mean. Okay, so right, how do you take that data, how do you take all that information and then use it? How do you use it to be smart and how do you use it to help your clients make wise decisions? Right? Fundamentally, when you look at some of the different parts of Houston, it is critical to understand that different parts of Houston are trending very differently.
That's
So
right.
on this and the next slide, what we've highlighted for you is where, first off, in the central Houston region, are there neighborhoods with the most amount of price reductions?
I.e., somebody says, I'm only going to buy if it's a screaming deal and don't show me anything that's not a screaming deal. Well, what does screaming deals look like? You're looking for long days on market and lots of price reductions because that is the indication that that market will soften faster.
Yes, because price reductions are the number one predictor of these future home prices. Because, right, that is where your comps are coming from.
Now, we're
Um,
not also telling you that these are the best neighborhoods for long-term appreciation. We're just telling you that these are the neighborhoods that currently have the opportunity for, quote, the best deal.
And so when you look at the top, Northwest Houston, Medical Center South, Five Corners, North Side, you have over half of the amount of homes that are on the market that have a price reduction. And so again, if you go back to that nationwide stat we saw earlier, it was about 19% of homes nationwide have a price reduction. When you look at these places where over half have a stated price reduction on the MLS, these are big numbers. But wait, it gets better. These are the neighborhoods in the suburbs with the highest number of price reductions. And again, when you look at this, Crosby, Fulshire, Hockley, Brookshire, Waller, 2/3 of the homes on the market have price reductions. That is enormous because, again, you know what it's like to have conversations with sellers about, hey, I think we priced a little high. Hey, I think you've got to adjust to a better price, right? That is not an easy conversation and nobody wants to hear it. In these neighborhoods, 2/3 of properties on the market have price reductions. It's
Which
enormous.
which just means that the market is balancing out to a balanced market. This is cyclical and what normally happens. Now, we're able to say this as a very practical economical theory. As a seller, this is an emotional situation because you're now telling them not only, hey, your house isn't worth what it was worth in 22, but we're not exactly sure how far down this may go. Or maybe we're at the bottom. We don't know. And so the ambiguity around that and those conversations are very emotionally charged.
Okay, so we go into the important thing that you're probably asking. Okay, Bob Page, this is crazy data, but what do I say? What do I actually talk to my sellers about if I have a listing in this area? And so, right, what we go back to is it's not what you tell them, it's what you ask them. And so, Paige, for these seller questions in areas that have very high price reductions, right, what do you say?
Typically is when we start the conversation, one, I bring it up, hey, if we don't have this many showings by this date, we need to have a conversation about where we are in price. Because we know that with our marketing based on these numbers should give us this number of showings. And if we've missed that mark, but I've hit the marketing numbers, then I know that we've missed it on price and we need to have that conversation. So I tee that up in advance. And here we are, Mr. Seller. Look, I know we talked about this 2 weeks ago. We really need to chat about where we are on price and what you think is the right decision for you and your household. So, Bob, when we first met, what was your original goal here? Blah, 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 blah. I want to sell my house. I need to be out by the end of the summer. Well, In order for that to happen, there's some things we're going to need to do. Um, is that something, what's changed for you since then? Especially if they're like, no, 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 I'm not going to lower the price because Bob, that's what Bob's telling me right now. No problem. It's your money, not mine. Um, can I ask what's changed for you since we first met? Right? Because what we need to unpack is just the questions around why they are hesitant to lower the price. And it's not because you haven't held enough open houses. They may say that, but the real question that you have to understand is what is it about that number that is so important to them? What does that mean for them? Because that number may mean if I don't get that number, I can't retire to Florida and I have to have that number. Great. Then there's some questions we can go through and kind of take that in a different route.
Okay. And again, this goes back, the lead up to this question goes back to that chart where you said again, in last time Houston went through something like this after the fall of oil prices, it took us about 5 years, right? We're about 2.5 years into that cycle. Paige, what's the next question?
So again, I'm not trying to get you to lower your price. I mean, that's never the goal. My goal is to help you meet your objectives for your family. And that objective may be that we don't need to sell the house right now. That's completely okay. Let me just ask if we're sitting here in 3 years having not sold your house, how would you feel? And Bob may say, I feel perfectly fine. That is great for me, and I do not mind. Great. Then that's a different conversation and a different discussion than I feel really bad about that. Like that's a problem for me. And so that's your opportunity to unpack what really needs to happen.
And again, you just tied this, and I think this is one of the most powerful questions that we have for today. Because again, if you tie the data, nationwide home prices are up about 1.3%. Houston, they're basically flat. They're less than that. In Houston, it took about 5 years before prices were able to overcome where they were around that 2014 timeframe. We're about 2.5 years into the cycle. So how would you feel if we're having the same conversation in 3 years? If the answer to that question is, hey, I'd feel really good as long as you held an open house every day, every weekend for the next 3 years, you want that data.
Yeah, I'd like to know that. Bob, we're kind of short on time here. The question, when you unpack things, is that it comes down really simple. Like the seller, you've got three options here. We can hope and keep waiting that the magic person comes along and we achieve your goals. We can take your house off the market and wait or rent it. Like that's a legitimate option. Or you and I can have some serious discussions about what needs to happen for you to reach your goals. But
The
those
other
are
part,
the options.
the other part that ties into this, what we're showing here, these are the areas in Houston with the lowest number of price reductions. Again, all this information's on our website. You click the trends page, you'll see this all live data. Right, Memorial, River Oaks, especially luxury, less than 1 in 5 have price reductions. Very different. For the suburbs, right, Memorial West area, right, about a third have price reductions. Dramatically different.
Mhm.
And so in that case, it's the conversations that you're having with your buyers because they say, hey, I see the headline message that, right, the sky is falling and I'm going to get this great deal. But for the buyers in these high demand, typically right now, luxury areas, what are the questions you want to be asking them when there is buyer competition?
Right, because everybody on this call is still seeing in some neighborhoods, in some areas, where the home is attractively priced and it's beautiful, it's going to have multiple offers because they've done all the right fundamentals to get what they need to achieve. And so, your questions for your buyers are things like, look, all things being equal, if you have to choose between saving time or saving money, what's more important to you? Right? They may say, look, I got to be in a house in 2 weeks. Great. They may say, it is so important to me that I save money and get the best deal possible, then that's what I'm looking to achieve.
If you had to choose by hitting your goal of being in a new home by August or waiting 3 years when interest rates may be lower, what would
What,
you rather do? Number two, how would you feel if you had to compete on a house?
well, I would feel very bad. Well, then that's a different conversation, and I will not do it. I will absolutely not do it. No way, no how, no. Screw you. I'm not doing it. Well, that's a different conversation where somebody says, ugh, I don't feel great about it, especially in this environment, but I really need my kid to get into Frostwood Elementary. Different
Very
conversation.
helpful conversation. And then again, what you're going to notice is the theme is the same for the last part. Paige, how do you see it?
The way I see it is I've got to get my kid into Frostwood. Okay, well, you're not finding what you're looking for, so do we just hope and keep looking or, school starts, tick tock, tick tock. School starts and we need to find the right option. Do we hope and keep looking? Do you stay where you are or keep renting, or do we work to make an offer that makes sense and also allows you to achieve your goals? And the point of making sense is let's understand what that market dynamic is in that neighborhood and accomplish that.
And again, that's where you go in is sales is not the act of telling somebody what they need to do. Sales is the art of asking wise, deep questions to help them uncover how to make wise decisions.
Yeah, all you're trying to do is give them the space and ask the questions so they can think through all of the options to make a good decision for their household.
And so one of the things we appreciate is Terry sent in a question last night, and so we were able to include this. And so our question was, hey, how does the condo market look right now? Again, this is a little more complicated graph, but it has a relatively simple answer. The graph itself, if you read it on the top, it has single family homes, townhomes, and condos, and going up and down, it has by price point. One of the things that you'll notice is that single family homes, this is absorption rate, so it's how many months of inventory are on the market. Single family homes are selling better than either townhomes or condos. One of the things, though, that you're going to notice for the condo market is that in every strata and segment of the price points, condos are selling worse than single family homes or townhomes.
Mhm.
And for luxury condos, part of it is because there's new inventory and construction. Part of it is because this market is really hurting with HOA fees and things that are going on with buildings, is there is almost 1.5 years of inventory in the condo market.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the Paige, you want to add to that?
To say, you're right, Bob. The new construction is definitely a piece of that. And so you're not going to walk into a new construction builder at a $2 million price point where it hasn't been built and get a screaming deal. They don't have to do that. But for your resale situations, you really want to understand that buying a condo is a lifestyle. It is not a great investment in Houston. And there are still challenges with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and their lending requirements. So the resale piece really hits you because if the HOA doesn't have enough money to meet their standards because of that condo that fell in Florida several years ago, the policy there is impacting us here and what the government is willing to back. So it's a challenge.
Now, again,
We've got 1 minute.
one of the biggest things here is, right, you're going back, and the question, of course, is how do I get my buyers and sellers to engage with me about data? Right? This is by leaving a voicemail. This is by a text message, right? Would it be okay if I showed you some new data and options? It may change a few things in your world. That is an incredibly powerful hook. Voicemails, first opening lines of calls, text message, and especially if you're going by text message, use and send some of the tools. These are examples of our pretty maps, right? Different maps with different colors, and also trends and graphs, pretty, because that is interesting, new, relevant, and updated daily. And so the opportunity you have to start a conversation around the would it be okay if I showed you some new options is enormously impactful. And so we highly recommend that you have an opportunity to use that. Again, if takeaways, market has shifted, inventory is up, days on market is up, price reductions are up. In the cycle, prices are next. And in that case, prices don't go up, they go down.
Yeah.
New inventory, new construction inventory has already started dropping prices, increasing incentives, and making more sales. So again, paramount that you talk to your sellers about that. And for buyers, you can get a good deal. For your sellers, Paige,
You got to have kind, thoughtful, transparent conversations. Because remember that this is an emotional journey for them. And when you walk in with the data and just slap them in the face with it, they're not going to be real appreciative. And in fact, they will become combative with you because you have not given them the space to show that you have heard them. You have to hear them and let them process through why the price that they think they need is so important for them, and then talk through the options of how realistic that is in this market.
And again, buyers, the same thing. If you've been on the sidelines, ask questions to see if this is the market they've been waiting for. It probably is. We look forward to seeing you on August 22nd.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Happy
Happy
Friday. Happy
Friday.
selling.